This faction video is going to be a bit shorter, and that's going to be true for all the Longbeard faction videos for the Alamans, the Burgundians and the Langobards. The reason for that is that they have, of course, few unique units, and I've covered the other units in detail in my other faction focuses. And I'm also not going to be showing the units, since I showed the units in the preview, the faction preview, where I show all the new units. So you can have a look at that if you want to see how the units look in battle. Now, this is mainly going to be concerning the abilities of the different units, whether they are worth bringing in an army, how many, and so on. First, we have also, of course, any hidden bonuses are also going to be talked about. Now, for spear infantry, we have the scavenger mob, the Alamanic scavengers, and the elite Alamanic scavengers. Now, the scavenger mob is fairly high up on the melee attack stats compared to their price. Their melee defense is also decent for their price. What they do lack is armor, health and morale, so even though it's nice to have spear wall on such a cheap unit, also expert charge defense and a resistance to fatigue, they will die in droves. They will die very, very easily, but they can be useful if you're able to send them into a cavalry engagement. Then we have the Alamanic scavengers. They have a decent charge bonus, they have good melee attack for their price. Compared to the natural unit to compare them to, the Germanic spears, their melee attack is substantially higher. Their melee defense is higher as well. They have less armor than the Germanic spears. They also have less health than the Germanic spears. Their morale is slightly lower and their speed is the same. So these units are not quite as sturdy as the Germanic spearmen, and slightly more expensive. Then we have the elite Alamanic scavengers, and they have more health, of course, more morale, they're a bit slower. They have the steady ability, expert charge, basically what you expect from a spear unit. The main thing that differs on the elite Alamanic scavengers is that they have a very high melee attack. So they will be hitting a lot in combat, although their melee defense is better than the melee defense of the Germanic Spearmasters. So they are sort of a budget Spearmaster, but they do lack precursors, they do lack the headhunt to enable them to stay in the fight for longer. So whether it's actually worth bringing these guys over the Germanic Spearmasters is debatable. Both units have some pros and cons, but the elite Alamanic scavengers are definitely a nice unit. The issue though is that if you compare the price of the elite the elite Alamanic scavengers with that of a Germanic horseman, for example, you can get let's see, how many upgrades can you have? The Germanic horse are 625, these guys are 675. So you can bring a 3 bronze chevron Germanic horseman for the price of 1 elite Alamanic scavenger. And I have absolutely no reason to bring more elite Alamanic scavengers instead of bringing Germanic horse in most armies. Some of you might find a use for them. They can definitely be fun to play with because they're a high melee attack spear unit. But, and this is my opinion of all spear units in the game, they are too expensive. Flat out too expensive. Then we have the Bejeweled Nobles, the iconic unit of the... I can talk a bit about the Protectores Defectors. The Protectores Defectors are Protectores that have had some combat practice and have slightly better stats than the standard Protectores, and that's about it. They also have the Attacking Testudo, and in Attacking Testudo, these units are very tanky indeed. Now, the Bejeweled Nobles. This is a weird unit. It has very high armor, it has very high health, it has very high melee defense, low melee attack. So you can see that on the scale of offensive-defensive, this unit is pretty far towards the defensive side of things. It also seems like the Creative Assembly really wants these guys to hold forever in combat, because they have Encourage, they have Unbreakable, they are Disciplined, and they also encourage nearby units. But at a price of 675, their killing power is not great. They can beat some similarly priced Nordic infantry in the game. However, in Shield Wall, they cannot. So these Bejeweled Nobles are in the difficult situation where they don't have a great charge and they don't have a good defensive ability. That is problematic for them, because they will lose to quite a few units on the charge, and they will lose to quite a few units if they charge into Shield Wall. So maybe reducing the ridiculous amount of morale effects on this unit and just giving them Shield Wall would be a good decision by the Creative Assembly. Then we have the Kodhor Raiders. Where to begin? They have a lot of ammo and a lot of missile damage, also a 30 bonus against large. Decent health, decent armor, decent melee defense, a very low charge bonus and a very low melee attack. So you're paying 1025 for this unit. And it's a unit that is very problematic to use because of its low speed. Sure, it does have rapid advance, it does have precision shot, it does scare. If this unit was able to stand, if this unit is able to stand still and fire all of its missiles on enemy cavalry, it can absolutely wreck enemy cavalry. The issue though with these raiders is that for the price of say 2 raiders, you're going to be getting 3 Germanic horsemen, and you still have funds left for upgrades. So these are units of very questionable utility, especially since they lack Parthian shot. And the 2 most iconic units of the Alamans lack the abilities they need to really make them effective units. The Bejeweled Nobles are a decent unit, but they do lack an understanding of what a defensive unit needs in order to be a purely defensive unit. And this is very clearly a purely defensive unit. Low melee attack, low charge, ridiculous armor and health. So I wouldn't advise bringing the Kodhor Raiders. They are just about useless. But let's have a look at a few potential builds from the Langobards. Now, it's almost sad, but I would prefer from the Alamans, I'm sorry. The Alamans. The Alaman special units are shit. They are absolute dog crap. They don't have a cavalry general. I think Germanic Horse is the best option in terms of cavalry for them. They also have Germanic Lancers. So if you want to go for the play the numbers game here and go for a sort of a rushy build, something like 6 Bejeweled Nobles and 6 Germanic Horse, 2 Germanic Lancers could be effective. However, if you go for noble Germanic swords instead, you get a unit with shield wall. You have a significant amount of funds available. You can bring the deadly Germanic archers to have them in your center. You can have a few pikes to force the engagements out on the flanks. And you can see how much I have left now for upgrading my units. I can, for example, make my Germanic horse triple gold and throw some upgrades down on my noble Germanic swords, for example. And this is a build I would prefer this build compared to the build using the Bejeweled Nobles, because now I either have to downgrade my cavalry significantly and even take out a pike or an archer, or take out 2 shock cavalry units. Of course, you could bring less. You could bring a smaller number of Bejeweled Nobles. If you want to play around with the scavenger units, you can have 2 elite Alamanic scavengers. You could have 2 cheap scavenger mobs, and then bring in 2 noble Germanic swords, for example. That could entirely work. However, I much prefer an Alaman build without the unique Alamanic units, and that, at least to me, that tells you something about the special units for the Alamans. They are definitely the weakest faction out of the units that came with the Longbeard DLC. Strength and Honor.